next is Wyat Soule with Reaching for the Stars.
Hello? Oh, hey, there we go. Hey, everybody. Hope we're all having a good evening so far. I'm here to talk to you guys about pre-modern astronomy and astrophysics. Just to let you know, I know very little about these things. I just read a book, and I said, hey, there's some cool things in there. I'm going to go read some Wikipedia articles and show you all what I found. Alrighty, so something I found that was really cool is Neptune discovery. So before we actually observed Neptune, we were able to calculate using Uranus's orbit that there should be some sort of massive planet out there. So in around 1821, this guy, Alexis Boulevard, published some tables saying, okay, Uranus should be following about this pattern in the coming years. And then we observed again a few years later and said, wait a second, that's not actually what's happening. Why is this happening? We have Newtonian laws here that are supposed to say it's supposed to be at this location, and it's not. So then two people, Urbain Lee Verrer and John Couch Adams, both independently started researching this and around the same time, which is pretty crazy to me. And they presented their findings in around 1845 saying, hey, there actually is a planet, and we can calculate around the size, the mass, the size, and the gravity of this object that's just out there that nobody can see. And then around 1 year later, in 1846, they actually observed Neptune in about 1 degree of a location different than where they predicted it at. And to me, that's pretty astonishing that in 1845, they can calculate where a planet is that nobody knows where, or that they just found. And I can't even find my car keys in the morning. And then also, a side note that I found in the book, uranium, neptunium, plutonium, cerium, and palladium were actually named after the planets shortly after they were discovered, except for neptunium, which was in 1940. Secondly, helium, that was discovered in 1896. This was actually used by, you know those little prisms where you shine white light into, and then it scatters the light into a rainbow? Well, they actually use these in order to identify elements in the periodic table. And during a solar eclipse in 1896, they noticed that, hey, the sun is actually emitting a spectrum that isn't like anything that we've observed on the planet thus far. And so they thought that it was sodium, but it turns out that it was actually a little bit off from sodium. And so they said, hey, this is a new element that we've just discovered, and it's nowhere here on Earth. And later we were able to do some tests and actually make helium on Earth, and this was then named the first element outside of, this is the first element discovered outside of Earth, which was a pretty great discovery in 1896. Next, stellar parallaxing and distance measuring. So we were able to find, using some pretty trivial trigonometry, honestly. So parallaxing is basically, say you hold out your finger, close one eye, close another eye. You see that your finger moves a little bit, but your background doesn't really move. So we were able to use that by saying, hey, I'm going to look at this star and see how much the stars behind it change when we go around the sun. So in June, I'm going to take a picture, and then in January, I'm going to take another picture and see how much the star has moved versus the other stars behind it. And we were able to determine star 61 Cygni was actually about 10.4 million light years away using this calculation, and that was only off about 1 million light years, 10.4 light years away, 10.4 million light years away, and then it was actually 11.4 million light years away, which is very close for math that's 1838. Next, measuring Earth's size and shape. I thought this one was probably the craziest one out of all the information that I read in the in the book. But in around 240 BCE, this guy named, I'm going to butcher this, Eratosthenes, let's go with that. He basically, what he did is he put 2 different sticks in 2 different cities. So he said, all right, here's a stick here, and here's a stick 200 miles away. And then he had him and his buddy measure the shadow of that stick on June 21st, which is the summer solstice, and say, okay, I'm measuring an angle of this, and then he was like, okay, I'm measuring an angle of this, and through that math, he was able to determine the circumference of the Earth, and with that, he was only off by a margin of error of 1% compared to today's technology. And then lastly, ancient celestial mapping and Babylonian astronomy. This one, they didn't really make any crazy discoveries, but they were able to collect data. And something that I realized throughout this conference, especially like with the new AI revolution, even if you're not able to do something with the data yet, still collecting it is going to be beneficial to people in the future. And that's exactly what the Babylonians did in 1200 BC. They were just collecting all the data that they could on the stars that were in the sky, writing them down on tablets, which I looked at and I can't even read. I mean, I can't read Babylonian, but it was pretty crazy. And they were able to decipher it, and it helped Greek astronomers hundreds or thousands of years later to determine where the stars should be in the future as well. And then Babylonians also discovered the Saros cycle, which was in order to determine when the next solar eclipses were and where they would be located. Okay, I'm about out of time. So I just wanted to leave you guys off with one last fact and then one quote, probably my favorite quote. Around 2.5 years ago, I actually got COVID, and I wasn't able to smell farts anymore, which really sucked. And so my favorite quote that I have now is, "He who smelt it, dealt it." See you guys later.
Thank you, Wyatt.